From the News Channel 5 Network, this is SportsLine.
Hey there, SportsLine on your television. Steve Layman here with you. Glad you are here with us on this Monday night on News Channel 5. Plus, so much to talk to tonight. We've got Predators wrap up last week. Lots of things to get into with them, certainly. After the best season in franchise history, now they head into the shortest offseason in franchise history. Actually announced today, amazingly enough, a week after the end of the Stanley Cup final. The preseason schedule was released today. The Predators will start September 19th, which, by the way, is exactly 3 months from today. That's when the Predators open their preseason schedule with a doubleheader at home against the Florida Panthers. Then they go to the road for a couple games at Tampa Bay and Columbus before coming back and hosting both of those two teams again before they get into the regular season. But for just a moment, think about how short this offseason is. It is just over 3 months from the final horn of last Sunday night against the Penguins in the Stanley Cup final and falling short of that dream of hoisting the cup. You'll be back at practice 3 months from then. You'll be playing a game, albeit exhibition, just over 3 months from then. It is a brutal grind, and that is why it is so difficult to do what the Preds did and come back and succeed again, or certainly what the Penguins did to go and win it and then come back the next season and repeat. That may be, first and foremost, the biggest challenge for the Predators heading into the offseason is how do you take this success and the sacrifice that it took to get to that point and turn it around and make it motivation to get back to work in a couple of weeks and train and fight and battle to get back and be ready for another grind next season. I mean, they played 104 games. That doesn't even count the preseason or all of the practice time that they spent on the ice. And now they've got to come back and do it again next year to the same level to get back to the same level and the same point that they were at this year. And you got to deal with all of the injuries. We went down with some of this last week, but James Neal playing the last half of the playoffs with a broken hand. Colin Wilson was beat up, hamstring issues. Craig Smith, high ankle sprain. I mean, there are all sorts of beat up people. They don't even know at this point the full extent of Ryan Ellis' injury. All that's been said is that it was something significant that he played through there in Game 6 that was clearly bothering him. Those types of courageous efforts are awesome in the playoffs when guys are fighting for the cup and you feel it and you're that close and you can touch it. It's painful, though, as soon as it ends, especially if you don't get the cup. And so how quickly those guys can get back, how quickly they can rehab, how quickly they can hit the ice and start to train and start to practice again to get ready for when they come back for training camp. Those are important questions to be asked and answered eventually this summer by the Predators. So we'll hear from some of those guys as they packed up their lockers. We'll hear from perhaps David Poile, Peter Laviolette, more from their stuff tonight on the program. And also the Titans wrapped up minicamp last week. A very productive offseason. Mike Mularkey cut short minicamp, allowing the players to win a punt, pass, and kick competition with the coaches to get out of practice on Thursday. Send them home early for the summer. It was certainly a joyous atmosphere, but something well earned, as he said. This is a team that has come to work every day in the postseason trying to get better. He said, and I thought this was very telling, he said he thinks the Titans right now are better off in terms of knowing their assignments and executing that than they were at the end of last season, when they won 5 of their final 6 games or whatever it was. That's a big-time statement in the off-season for any team. He did throw in the caveat that obviously we're not in pads right now, but just in terms of where guys need to be and knowing their assignments, they're way ahead of the curve right now in this off-season program. That has to be encouraging if you're a Titans fan. That in year 2 of this offseason program, these guys seemingly are just building blocks on top of the foundation they laid a year ago. And that is why the expectations are so high for whenever they show up at the end of next month for training camp. This is a team that should win the AFC South. They just should. They have the roster to do it. They have the quarterback to do it. They have the continuity within their staff and systems to do it. There's no reason why this team can't win the AFC South. There's no reason why the Titans cannot be in the playoffs this year. And how different does that make this summer than just about every summer for a decade now? 2008 was the last time the Titans made the playoffs. And there have been a lot of years in between there where it just hasn't felt like they were even competitive or that they had a chance to end that drought in the upcoming season. This year it feels different. This year it feels like the Titans can go out there and get it done. And they can win the AFC South. And they can get a bye in the playoffs. It feels like they have that type of a team. We'll hear from some of them as they wrapped up mini camp and get set for training camp. Now 5-6 weeks on their own to train and refresh before they get into the real grind of the season. We'll hear from them coming up on the program tonight as well. Phone lines are also open if you guys would like to get in on the conversation. 737-7767 is the number. One newsworthy item today from the Titans, despite the fact here we are at the end of June, they went out and signed a player today, officially announcing on Twitter that they have signed veteran receiver Eric Decker, 7-year veteran of both the Broncos and Jets. Terrific track record, but was released by the Jets just about a week ago. Titans brought him in. He was there for minicamp last week. He went through their physical. He met with everybody, and he seems like a really good fit. You can talk about the numbers. 7 seasons with the Broncos and the Jets, 385 passes. He's a guy that's excelled in the red zone over the course of his career with 52 touchdowns down there. That's a great weapon to add into your arsenal with a quarterback like Marcus Mariota, who still is yet to throw an interception in the red zone in his career. He's got a perfect passer rating down there. You just add another weapon to that, can make the Titans even more lethal in the red zone. But you add a veteran guy who can give you that presence and leadership out at the position. And what about the fit? It's been noted that Eric Decker is married to country singer Jesse James. They have a house here in Nashville. Now their kids can go to school here, don't have to worry about packing up for the fall or anything like that. So that's certainly a positive for the fit and the culture of what's going on. But I think culture is the biggest thing when you talk about the fit. Mike Mularkey and John Robinson have talked ever since day one of them being together here in Nashville. They're looking for a certain type of player. They want guys who are team first, who are tough and hard-nosed football players, very coachable guys. That is what Eric Decker is. He was a lower draft pick. He was a guy who didn't have many offers out of high school. He's made himself. He was a 2-sport athlete at Minnesota. He shined in the Big Ten. He was overlooked in the draft process. He's come in, and he's been a reliable pass catcher for 7 years now in the NFL. He had injuries last year, both shoulder and hip injuries. Those are concerns. But if he passed that physical, which he did, there's no reason to think that he can't come back with that work ethic and be a productive guy for you. He loves that team-first attitude. He was on those star-studded receiving corps in Denver where he got overlooked by Brandon Marshall and Demaryius Thomas and Julius Thomas. But he still made catches and was very productive there for those teams. He went to New York and made a bunch of catches and made his mark there. It's never been about me with Eric Decker, and I think that is a huge selling point for the Titans staff as they bring a guy like that in. The way I look at it here is the numbers at the receiver position just increased. The roster spot, however, did not. So that'll be the big question going into training camp now is a lot of teams keep 5 receivers. Maybe you go 6, especially with this group that you have with the Titans. But you have to figure that Rashard Matthews, who was your leading receiver a year ago, is one of those. He's going to be a starter. Corey Davis, you just drafted 5th overall. He's going to be there, probably a starter. So then you look at the 3rd slot. I don't necessarily think he'll be a starter, but you just used a 3rd-round draft pick on Taywan Taylor. They're not going to get rid of him. So those three guys, I think, are your first three roster spots. It's hard for me to imagine Eric Decker doesn't make this team now. So there's 4. After that, where do you go? Tajay Sharp was impressive last year as a rookie. He's missed much of this offseason because of a foot injury. He also has some legal issues kind of lingering over his head off the field. Perhaps this is insurance for that as well. But I'm not sure. You just don't like Decker in that role better at this point for the Titans. But who gets slot 5 and or 6 for the Titans? Between Tajay Sharp, Harry Douglas, who's a veteran who they like a lot, Eric Weems, who they brought in to be a special teams guy and receiver for them this offseason. A guy like Trey McBride has been a valuable special teams guy and up on the active roster each of the last 2 seasons at the end of the year after injuries. Where do you go? Who makes the team out of that group? I think those are going to be fascinating questions moving into training camp this fall for the Titans. We've gone from wondering who can catch the ball, if anyone, for the Titans, and who can be relied upon, to now wondering if guys that they have relied upon and believe are good, productive members of that wide receiver core are even going to be good enough to make the team out of training camp. That is the remarkable work that John Robinson has done bolstering this receiving core and bolstering this roster. There is now competition at places that were real weaknesses before. I mean, a couple of years ago when he took over, there were so many holes on the Titans roster. I likened it to Swiss cheese. Just everywhere you looked, there was a hole. And John Robinson is slowly but surely over 2 years eliminated those. Yeah, there may be some spots that you still have concerns. How good will this receiver group be really? How good can the cornerback group be? The secondary as a whole. There are still some concerns, but there aren't holes anymore. There are bodies in those places and some bodies that have played really well. And now you stack in some other guys, veterans from other places and draft picks. I think you begin to feel pretty good about those positions. They've got to do it. They've got to go out and play. Just like Mike Mularkey saying that this team's way ahead of where they were at the end of last year. I mean, that's a nice thing to say. At some point, you have to come back and go into training camp and put on the pads and then go out there on September 10th and beat the Raiders, another team that has high expectations for this year. You got to go out and do it in game action. But the expectations and the feeling around this team is far different than it's been in a long, long time. And that's a positive if you are the Titans, for sure. We can talk Predators. We can talk Titans. Phone lines are open tonight. 737-7767 is the number. We would love to hear from you. Your thoughts on the Eric Decker signing today, what it does to the wide receiver core, or any other question about the Titans heading into the summer. We can also talk Vegas expansion draft. We might get into a little bit of that on the other side of this break. And what's to come for the Predators this summer as well. Again, phone lines open. 737-7767 is the number. Time for our first break. You're watching SportsLine on News Channel 5+.